Kevin Powell fought to focus on the whiteboard in front of him, instead of the thoughts radiating from each of his teammates like 3 radios turned on at once. His grip tightened around his pen, pressing the tip of it into the legal pad, where he'd fully intended to take notes, but had so far only drawn a bunch of spirals and circles. Man, this is going on forever. Irritation rose from Hummingbird, who sat to his left. He glanced at her instinctively, and she immediately glared at him, faced forward, and angled away. "Stay out of my head, you creep!" His face heated. It wasn't like he was doing it intentionally. Her thoughts were just loud. Part of being a forceful personality, he supposed. That, and she wasn't particularly happy to be there. Negative emotions tended to project more. The movies always made ventilation ducts look so much more spacious than they actually were. Ava dragged herself a few inches further, squeezing her shoulders past another joint. Honestly, she wasn't that much bigger than the crazy thief lady in that heist show she and David used to watch. But that girl never had any trouble crawling through vents, while Ava was beginning to wonder if claustrophobia was something you could catch as an adult. David probably would have told her you didn't catch claustrophobia, you developed it, or something equally pedantic. But even if he were still around, he wouldn't have been in the vents. Neither would she, but that was beside the point. And whose fault is it that he's not here? Light filtered up through a grate just ahead. Ava wriggled up to it and peered down. The room below appeared empty, and she should be just one door over from an emergency staircase. Too bad none of the nearby vents opened directly into the staircase, but she'd take what she could get. "Here's your stuff," growled Rightcross, Bite's power sable. She shoved a small navy blue duffel bag toward him. "What, no manila envelope?" "Courtesy of DOSA. The agency feels compelled to compensate you for your time served." "Your skill at sarcasm is inspiring." Elam reached out his hand for the bag, but Bite grabbed it first.
"Let me check and make sure all your belongings are here."
Bite made a show of rifling through the bag.
"One ludicrous costume, $3 and change. Oh, what have we here? One cell phone."
He held it up, and it sparked and started to smoke as his power surged through it.
"Oops."
Bite dropped the phone back in the bag and threw it at Elam, who glared at him as he caught it. "If you weren't able to stretch your fingerprints, we'd have you for that bank heist in Denver along with Jupiterus," said Rightcross. "It's only a matter of time until you make a mistake, and then—" She smacked her hand with her fist. "It doesn't matter how many mistakes I make as long as you two keep making them." It was all ready. Selena walked to her cabinet and put away her purse. She thought through her plan for the day. Focus on engaging the kids individually at first, then group playtime, then animal acting, then playground. After they ran outside, there would be lunch, then coloring, then practice shapes and letters. Any extra time before the parents came would be pretend play. She nodded to herself. She was ready for the kids. But the parents... She sat down in a heap and tried not to think about the parents that would be with the kids. If she worried about them, she might flinch. At least today, the administration made sure the parents left quickly so that the children could adjust better. The really stressful day would be in a couple of weeks at Meet the Teacher. She suppressed a shudder and felt for the disruptor cuff on her ankle.
"What about your parents? At least one must have been a Sable."
Haley shrugged. "Never met them. I'm adopted, and we don't have any info on either of them. I was dropped off at a fire station when I was less than a week old. I have a great family, but I'm not sure how they'd react to superpowers. What about you?"
"My grandmother got her genes tweaked back in the day. She had lightning powers, went by strike. My dad has electricity powers, calls himself Zapper. And I have this thing with electronic devices. The powers must be weakening with each generation."
"Or getting more refined," Haley said.
Paul nodded. "Thanks, that's a more positive spin. I guess I'm a legacy sable, but we're not quite at the level of the Parks or the Powells. He frowned. But you really should register.
Haley smirked. What if I want to be a villain?
A villain who helps people with their careless mistakes? I'm not seeing it.
Let me tell you a story. Her eyes were moist, and she was biting the inside of her cheek, but she also looked somehow frustrated. Not just at the accident, which would be understandable, but more like she was mad purely at herself. I'm sorry, she murmured. She lingered for a moment as if wanting to say more, but then turned and headed to a table in the far corner, leaving her drink still on the counter. Beta helped the student clean her shirt as best as could be done, thankful that there was no more shouting. Then she finished the last batch of drinks. When the college group had finally gone, she picked up the jade juicer, heading to where a smiley-faced girl still sat slumped over the table. As she approached, she saw that the girl had taken a notebook out of her bag and was slowly tracing over an unmarked corner of the cover with her finger. Under her touch, yellow lines began to appear, gradually thickening. Beta stared in amazement. It was a smiley face, just like the ones on her jeans and bag. How did you do that? Beta blurted. The girl jolted and her head shot up. She paused, then did the self-deprecating, humorless smile again. It's my thing. My superpower. Tracy loomed over her. Looks like you always end up on the ground, wretched revolt. Maybe that will teach you not to avoid me during gym. Tracy left her vision. The sounds of slapping and more laughter told her that everyone was high-fiving over her pain. Why was her pain so funny to them? Why couldn't they just leave her alone? She felt hot all over. Heat from embarrassment and anger? Maybe the heat was from the insane amount of steam that was filling up the room. She was surrounded by steam, but it didn't burn her. Slowly, she sat up. The steam surprised her classmates, too. They all gave terrified screams of pain. Someone opened the doors, but the steam was slow to leave. Violet had a sinking feeling that this was her fault somehow. The steam wasn't burning her, and the more steam filled the room, the less angry she felt. Was Dad out there in the crowd? Jamal had not had the chance to ask him this morning if he was coming, but at dinner last night, his stepmom Samantha had acted excited about attending one of Jamal's track meets for the first time. That suggested that Dad would be there too. Dad hadn't made it to a meet all season. Maybe things would be different this time.
Runners, on your marks!
Jamal dropped into ready position, hands resting on the rubbery red bumps beneath him, and his head darted briefly to the side, seeking Coach Thomas. The coach nodded once, his head chopping down between broad shoulders.
If you're watching this, Dad, this is for you.
The starter's gun fired. Jamal sprang forward like a cheetah, his feet barely touching the track as his legs pumped at lightning speed. Sometimes Jamal wondered if he had sable powers he didn't know about. When he ran, really ran, it felt like the world was a blur moving in slow motion around him. But the competing runners kept pace, so Jamal did not allow himself to be distracted by fantasies of superpowers. He just ran. Julian was alone in the cheerless, concrete interrogation room, but the one-way window in the wall was likely full of watching eyes. He stared at his hands and tried to contain the panic that had been building inside him since he'd awakened in a cell and been dragged to this room. Panic that clawed at his throat and sent his heart galloping. Panic that upset his sense of his own bioenergy. Calm, he told himself. Peace and calm. No one has hurt you yet. But Julian had hurt other people. He stared at his hands, flexing his fingers. They were all dead because of him. Every last one. He had no defense. His fate was either a cell for life or execution, depending on what state this was. He didn't know. He probably wasn't in Mexico anymore, though. This room was too clean. Amelia surreptitiously studied the group of moms talking and laughing in the shade near the playground. A little girl clambered up onto a swing and called insistently for a push. The petite mom holding the hot pink thermos wavered slightly, and then suddenly there were two identical women standing together. One of them stayed where she was and continued talking, while the other jogged over to push the little girl on the swing. A toddler nearby took a few too fast steps and started to fall. Amelia's heart lurched in anticipation of the all-too-familiar wail of pain at skinned knees about to emanate from the child, but one of the moms raised a hand, and an invisible force caught the baby, preventing the fall and gently lifting him back to his feet. The woman gave a fond smile, brushed a strand of blonde hair out of her eyes, and continued talking. "Looks like we're in the right place," Amelia said. She took a deep breath, mustering all the confidence she had, despite wanting to turn around and bolt for the car.